Every organization claims to have values or core principles. Very few have intentional culture. That's because values are easy to declare, but culture is expensive to maintain. Culture is not what you say matters. It's what you consistently allow, reward, ignore, or correct. And if there's a gap between stated values and tolerated behavior, the behavior always wins. So let's anchor this more clearly. Core values are supposed to be behavioral standards, not branding statements. They exist to answer questions like, how do we act under pressure? What do we do when there's no rule in place to follow? What behavior is considered unacceptable here, even if it means that we get better results? And what cost are we willing to absorb to stay aligned? If your values can't answer those questions, they're aspirational at best and misleading at worst. So here's the mistake that most leaders make. They think culture is created simply by communicating it, by having meetings, by giving rousing speeches, or by putting up some fancy posters on the wall. But culture is actually created through patterns of response. What happens when someone violates a stated value? What happens when someone performs well but behaves poorly? What happens when someone raises a concern about an issue? And what happens when someone challenges the status quo? Those moments, the reactions to those moments, teach faster than any onboarding deck or PowerPoint presentation you'll ever see. This is where tolerance becomes the most important leadership behavior. So whatever you tolerate, you're teaching. If you tolerate passive-aggressive behavior, missed commitments, disrespectful communication, cutting corners, and avoiding hard conversations, you are shaping your culture whether you like it or not. Silence is not neutral. It's instructive. Now, let's connect this explicitly to your core values, because this is where most organizations break down. Values are not universal truths. They should be chosen constraints. We're going to unpack this. You don't discover your values. Well, you can discover your values. Do an audit of your actions for the last month, and you'll see what values your actions are actually indicating you have versus what you say you have. You can also decide your values and then behave accordingly. Once you decide on your values, they can act like a contract with yourself, your personal core values, with your team and your office core values, or with the future that you claim that you want to achieve. And what core values are demonstrated by that future you and that future team. But contracts without enforcement are just fiction. Might as well be reading a novel. And here's a hard leadership truth. You don't need more values. You don't need to use better words with your values. You actually need to take fewer values, but take them a whole lot more seriously. Most organizations dilute culture by listing way too many values and enforcing none of them. 3 to 5 values, well defined, each tied to observable behaviors, will outperform 10 vague ideals every time. Culture also doesn't exist at the organizational level first. It exists in these micro environments between people, the relationships that exist between the individuals in your environment. Teams, departments, team meetings, project interactions, and one-on-ones. You don't fix culture globally, you fix it locally, repeatedly. That's why 2 teams in the exact same organization can feel completely different. Same values on paper, but a different tolerance in practice. This is where leaders often get uncomfortable. Are you? Because working on culture forces trade-offs. These trade-offs can be really difficult. You eventually face moments where enforcing a value costs you a higher performer in your office. It may address behavior, creating short-term friction. And it forces you to hold the line, can slow progress, at least temporarily. Those moments are not cultural failures, they're cultural tests. If values disappear when they become inconvenient, they were never values. They were just preferences. So let's be clear about something else. Culture doesn't mean you have to necessarily be nice all the time. It's about being clear. High trust cultures are not conflict free. They are conflict capable. They can tolerate disagreement because expectations are explicit and values are shared. Not because everyone agrees, but because everyone understands the standards. There's also a leadership identity piece here. Leaders don't have culture. They are culture and can amplify it. Your reactions become norms, your blind spots become loopholes, and your courage or lack of it becomes permission. This is why cultural work is exhausting for leaders who want distance from consequences. You can't delegate what you tolerate. So if you want to understand your real culture, don't look at your values document. Look at who you promote and who you protect. Look at who you ignore and who you correct. And look at what behaviors get excused when things get too busy. That is your culture. Culture is not built in grand moments. It's built in small, repeated decisions. And over time, those decisions compound into an environment that either reinforces your values or quietly erodes them. The culture feels off. The fix is rarely inspirational. It's almost always structural, behavioral. Redefine your values in behavioral terms, tighten tolerance gaps, and address small violations early. This helps to align consequences with the standards that you want to set. It's not glamorous, but it's the only work that's going to work.